Welcome to this video about an introduction to dyslexia, part 4 of 4, interventions. What is an intervention? Within the SEND graduated approach, an intervention is a targeted and time-limited form of support, which is additional to class-based high-quality teaching and reasonable adjustments. That is, the support that is additional to dyslexia supportive classroom strategies, more personalised class-based differentiation, and the provision of ordinarily available equipment, resources, and assessment modifications in regular lessons. Sometimes interventions can take place within regular lessons, reducing withdrawal time and maximising the opportunities for the pupil to transfer and link their knowledge and skills. Some interventions need to take place away from regular lessons and can be scheduled during school time or as part of the extended school day, for example during early mornings or in the afternoon. Types of common interventions for dyslexic pupils. Interventions for dyslexic pupils often focus on developing skills in one or more of the following areas: spelling, reading, writing, handwriting or touch typing, fine motor skills, memory, maths, and study skills. When do we need to consider putting in place interventions? If a pupil is not making good progress from their starting points and/or is at risk of not reaching their academic potential, despite high-quality differentiation within high-quality teaching, it is time to consider putting in place one or more interventions. This is part of the Assess, Plan, Do review cycle. If the pupil has not been assessed and identified as dyslexic, it is important to evaluate the impact of any interventions as well provided to the pupil, alongside high-quality teaching, reasonable adjustments, and the provision of any additional equipment and resources, when exploring whether a profile of dyslexia and SPLD is likely. Triggers for considering putting in place interventions. It is important to ensure that you have the regular opportunity to scrutinise routinely available progress data for dyslexic pupils with the use of robust data tracking tools and supported by pupil progress monitoring systems. The key aims of this work are to quickly pick up concerns around fairly small steps progress and to identify inconsistent profiles of performance. For example, English data may indicate that a pupil may need specific additional reading intervention at this time. Additional sources of evidence include pupil work samples, specific assessment data, behaviour and engagement data and information, and views provided by the pupil and their parents during meetings. Recap: the multisensory structured cumulative approach. Simultaneous and multisensory VAK. Teaching uses all learning pathways in the brain, that is visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, simultaneously or sequentially in order to enhance memory and learning. Plus, systematic and cumulative. Multisensory language instruction requires that the organisation of material follows the logical order of the language. The sequence must begin with the easiest and most basic concepts and progress methodically to more difficult material. Each concept must also be based on those already learned. Concepts taught must be systematically reviewed to strengthen memory. Step by step. For a structured program to be the most effective, a cumulative element needs to be included. Each new piece of information is learnt separately and rehearsed until the pupil is comfortable with it. Then the new learning is practiced together with the knowledge the pupil already has. An important point to remember here is that the big picture of what is to be learnt needs to be given first in order for the pupil to have a clear idea of where these smaller pieces of learning fit within this overview. Structured learning takes place along a carefully designed pathway, small step by small step. Each step follows the last in a logical way. One of the main ingredients for success is consistency. Learning along one structured pathway thoroughly and consistently with plenty of repetitions and opportunities for overlearning is better than snatching at different aspects of programs in a haphazard way. Step by step. Think about something that you would like a pupil to learn. It could be a task, a piece of information, or a new skill that you would like them to develop. Structure it and break the task down into its component parts. Convert it to being multisensory. How could you reinforce this in an oral, visual, and kinesthetic way? And put the whole task back together in a cumulative way. Ensure there's enough opportunity for the pupil to learn and feel comfortable with each component before adding it to the next piece of learning. Precision teaching, an example of a cumulative, structured, multisensory activity. Precision teaching is a fast-paced, frequent and repetitive approach to the delivery of interventions, focused very precisely on the mastery of a specific skill. Take a look here at what a TA is saying during this brief session. What is an evidence-based intervention? An evidence-based intervention is an intervention that is supported by evidence from well-conducted, controlled research studies, showing that the intervention improves pupil outcomes. An important point about interventions for dyslexic pupils. Are evidence-based interventions always effective for dyslexic pupils and pupils with dyslexic type profiles? The answer is no. Some interventions that may have a strong evidence base will not always work effectively for dyslexic pupils due to their unique and varying learning profiles. It is important to critically examine the evidence, to seek professional advice and guidance if available, and to refer to publications which steer you in the right direction. Study skills support. Dyslexic pupils in upper key stage 2 and above can sometimes find it helpful to receive additional and explicit guidance to develop their study and learning to learn skills. This can cover, for example, understanding how they learn, organizing their work, improving their memory, reading strategies, spelling strategies, learning new information and researching, writing strategies, presenting their work, and preparing for assessments and exams. Study and homework after school provision. Some dyslexic pupils can find homework and self-directed study and coursework a significant challenge. This can be due to a range of reasons which we've explored in earlier videos of this program, including difficulties with literacy skills, memory, attention, and personal organizational skills. It can therefore be very beneficial to offer a study or homework provision in your school. This provision can simply provide a space for undertaking work with adult support when needed. It can also possibly include more structured sessions, which can model effective study habits, optional or extra interventions, enrichment activities, and extra access to assistive technologies. Using access arrangements for controlled assessments and exams. Does the pupil have access to assistive technology that is part of their normal way of working? Does the pupil need extra time, typically 25%, to complete an assessment if under test conditions and/or any rest breaks? Does the pupil need to complete an assessment outside the classroom under staff supervision? Does the pupil need a support staff member to scribe for them? If the answer is yes to any of the above, especially for controlled assessments and exams, it is important to ensure that dyslexic pupils are provided with explicit instruction in how to make best use of the access arrangements that they are entitled to. Supporting parents and carers to support interventions at home. Firstly, if a dyslexic pupil is accessing one or more interventions, this should be in agreement with the pupil's parents and carers, and ideally these should be provided and some periodic feedback about the outcomes of these interventions. Parents and carers of dyslexic pupils may find it helpful if your school can provide resources, occasional workshops or meetings to understand what they can do to support their child's provision. This applies to all of the different types of interventions that we've covered in this video and covers possible activities, technologies, and strategies that can be tried at home. Considering a full dyslexia assessment. If a pupil presents with dyslexic type difficulties, plus school-based activities have been carried out to identify signs of dyslexia, plus a range of appropriate class-based strategies have been implemented by teachers and teaching assistants, plus evidence-based intervention has been put in place and evaluated for impact, and the pupils not making good progress from their starting points at this stage of the SEN graduated approach, the school and/or parents and carers should consider a full assessment. Remember, most methods of formal identification of dyslexia are carried out usually from the age of 7 onwards. The purpose of a full assessment is to test whether the pupil's performance presents a pattern of difficulties that is consistent with those that are associated with dyslexia. More advanced dyslexia screening. More advanced dyslexia screeners can be carried out sometimes with specific individual pupils. These screeners are not appropriate for wide-scale screening of whole pupil cohorts. This needs to be selective and prioritised. Advanced screening tools do not formally assess dyslexia, but they do provide a more detailed profile of strengths and weaknesses. What does a formal dyslexia assessment involve? Most methods of formal identification of dyslexia, carried out usually from the age of 7 onwards, seek to find a pattern of difficulties that could be consistent with those that would normally be associated with dyslexia. These may include tests to assess literacy difficulties, working memory difficulties, phonological processing difficulties, and handwriting difficulties. The purpose of these tests is to build up a profile of the pattern of the individual's performance based on a range of tasks. Once this profile has been developed, it is then examined and interpreted. Specialist Dyslexia SPLD assessors. A dyslexia assessment can be undertaken by an individual who has achieved a Level 7 Dyslexia SPLD Specialist Assessor qualification. A Dyslexia SPLD Specialist Assessor will assess a pupil using a range of testing resources and tools. The aim of this is to build a comprehensive profile of the pupil. Following the assessment, they will compile a report that should provide detailed information about the results and support recommendations, approaches, and programs. Educational psychologists. Educational psychologists apply psychological theory, research, and techniques to support pupils, their families, and schools. They work in a variety of ways, including observations, interviews, and assessments. They routinely offer consultation, advice, and support. Relating to assessment work, an educational psychologist will usually administer a range of tests. They are often closed tests because they are only available for use by the psychologist, as they require a greater level of expertise in their administration. These tests should provide more detailed results. Will the pupil be listed on the SEND register? A pupil is only listed on the SEND register for SPLD if a suitably qualified professional has undertaken appropriate assessments and formally identified one or more SPLD needs. There should be an assessor's report on file as evidence of this. This includes dyslexia, alongside other types of SPLD, including working memory difficulties and processing difficulties. This is the end of this video. You can view more videos on this channel in the About series.